in this lesson, we're going to play around with the brushstroke exercises and also explore some brush pressure, create some thin to thick strokes, some petal and leaf strokes as well. Now, this is going to really help build your brush confidence. So let's start. So my first tip for you is to explore the brush pressure. And it is very important to really maximize or utilize the entire bristles, the entire belly of the brush. Don't be afraid to apply pressure onto your brush to create varied strokes. So usually with beginners, they are scared of pressing their brush onto the paper. So they usually use just the tip or up to half of the bristles, and they cannot get the full potential of their brushes. What we want to do in this lesson is to learn how to dance with your brush by being more familiar with the strokes and how you can switch from more pressure to light pressure in one single stroke. But of course, first we have to practice. And I know you've probably seen these exercises in my previous classes, but it's going to be a good refresher for you if you have been painting for a while. So when you use just the tip of the brush, you can create some nice thin strokes just like this. Just apply a light pressure. Now I'm going to apply a bit more pressure, and you can now see the lines are thicker. Okay, now let's just add a bit more pressure. I'm pressing about 3/4 way of the bristles, and now I'm going to really press the entire brush. You can see those wide strokes, and the bristles are really fanning out. Now, this is the classic thin to thick stroke exercise. So we're going to start with the tip of the brush. Just lightly press and then lift towards the end and then press again until you form kind of like a leaf shape. Alright, so let's do another one. You can grab any color that you want, and you can also stop halfway. Alright, so you can see that the bristles are fanning out when you press it really hard on the paper. Now, this is a really good exercise to create or hone the muscle memory in your hand, so that every time you paint a petal stroke, you automatically know when to apply pressure and when to lift your brush to create a thinner stroke. And as you're painting this, make sure that your brush is also wet so that your brush can easily expand on the paper. You can definitely use student grade paper for this exercise. I'm using the Bahong Academy in 200 GSM. Alright, let's do some leaf strokes. So right here, I'm going to start at the bottom part of the leaf. I'm going to press my brush towards the middle and then lift and just drag it towards the end to create that pointy tip. Now, if I lift right away, I will get these rounded edges. So it's also a technique if you want to vary the shapes of the petals or the leaves. So you can see the difference. On the left side, you have pointy tips because we dragged our brush and lifted it towards the end. But here on the right, you have rounded edges because we lifted our brush right away. Now feel free to do a couple more leaf exercises to observe how your brush moves on the paper. Let's practice some elongated leaves. So I'm just going to lightly press my brush and lift towards the end. So I'm not really putting a lot of pressure onto the bristles. I want this to be thin, long petals. Roughly just 1/3 of the brush is really touching the paper. So you can do an S movement. So you have these curvy strokes if you want to add some movement to your leaves. So when you're painting leaves, you want to add some movement to make the leaves look more organic. So you can also try to wiggle it a little bit and then lift towards the end. And you'll notice that the leaf is facing down. Let's do it again. Just wiggle a little bit. Then lift and make the pointy tip face downwards. Now we can do this in different angles. You can experiment with this. So I'm going to start right here at the bottom. I'm going to lightly press my brush and then move it up, going to the left. So what I love about painting leaves is that every time you paint this technique or use this technique, it's going to look slightly different. So I'm going to start right here at the top and wiggle my brush going down. So you can do this in different angles and you'll be able to create leaves that face different directions. Okay, we'll start from the right, going to the left. So it feels like I'm pushing my brush to the other direction and also remembering to wiggle my brush to create that jagged edge. I'm just going to show you the direction of the leaves so that it's easier for you to follow. For tip number 4, we're going to do some petal strokes using the tip of the brush. And this is an example. You can see those bits and pieces of strokes. It's really a good way to add some character to your loose florals. So let's just try to practice that. I'm going to be using the tip of this pointy brush. And we're going to stipple our brush, create some small dots. And you can see I'm resting my hand on my pinky finger. Alright, so now let's try to create some letter C curves. So using the thin part of the brush, just try to press towards the middle of the stroke and then drag and lift towards the end. Now it doesn't have to be perfect. What you want is to learn how to bend that tip of the brush to create these wispy strokes. So I'm just going to do a straight line, and what you want is that in one single stroke you have a thin and a thick part. This is another way to really hone that muscle memory in your hand. So try to do this a couple more times. You can do a leaf stroke like this. So let's start with a thin stroke and then press and then lift. So it looks like tiny leaves. You can also switch to a smaller brush if you're more comfortable with that. Usually, if I want to really practice that muscle memory, I try to use a bigger brush and paint these tiny strokes. So I'm holding my brush near the bristles because I want a little bit more control when it comes to painting these strokes. So just notice how only the tip part of this brush really bends or touches the paper's surface. You can paint some letter C curves. This is a stroke that I use often for adding some embellishments on the loose florals, and you'll see more of that later on as we practice our florals. So I also like to do this in different directions. So here I'm going to start from the bottom, going up. Okay, so let's do this from afar so you can see how my hand moves. So we're going to add these small pieces of stroke from the florals. Alright, so I'm resting my hand on my pinky finger. And we're doing these small letter C curves, just using the tip of the brush and really lightly bending it on the paper. And again, I'm holding near the bristles because I want a little bit more control when I'm doing these wispy strokes. So I am going to do some broader petals. We're going to hold our brush in the middle. So now we are going to start from the bottom and just press our brush, go up and then down. So you can see that we're using or utilizing the side of the brush to create a broad stroke. So we want to do this in a curved manner to add some shape to your petal. You can see we are using the side of the brush to create a broad stroke. So what I love about painting loose florals is that no petals are alike. You can see we have two different petals here, even though we painted using the side of the brush. So that's really, really unique about painting loose florals. Okay, let me just do it another time. I'm going to start here at the top and then another one on the right. And you can see those white dots there. It means that my brush is not too wet. So that's why it produced this texture, which looks like a little bit like dry brush technique. And I think it looks great. It adds some character. So if you want a really opaque brush stroke, make sure your brush is loaded with a lot of paint. Okay, so now we're going to use just half of the brush to paint a petal. And you'll see that the stroke is definitely thinner compared to pressing your brush really hard on the paper. Let's do another one. So this is just half. And I'm going to show you again, if you really press your brush onto the paper, you get a wide stroke like this. It's really important to understand how your brush works. For petals, it's a combination of strokes for me. So you mix broad strokes and also thin strokes to create some nice wispy petals. Alright, so I just loaded up my brush with some more paint. Let's do another petal. So you can just move your brush up and down if you want a bigger petal. So these are some brushstroke techniques that you can apply to painting loose florals.